Hey guys, today I'm going to show you just how to navigate, how to set up, and how to work the Playback app. So once you get into the app itself, it's going to look something like this. You have a settings button up at the top. It shows you some of your settings, like you can pick the click sound, stuff like that. We changed ours to gentle because that's just kind of the best one that we've found. Then you can exit out of that. So basically the first thing that you're going to want to do is actually set up your playlist. So you can see that this says add a song right here. So it's pretty simple. You just click onto that. You have a few options here. You have library, click tracks, and pads. And I'll show you what some of these do. So if you want to add a song, you go into my library. It'll show you kind of the recent ones that you downloaded if you want like a quick thing that you know that you just downloaded recently. Beyond that, you can go into songs, artists, albums. You can search through any of those categories. I found that the easiest way to do it is just go into songs. And then you have a list here, but if you have a really big list, you can go to this filter and you can look it up by name. So the first one we're doing this weekend is Victory Is Yours. And I select the song. And usually you don't have to change any of this stuff because this is just kind of like the default, the click, the key of the original song. Sometimes we like to change the key, but we found that if you go into the key, with some songs, for some reason, it will kind of limit it to a certain range for what you're allowed to download it under. But once you actually download it and you let it load the whole way, then you can go back in and edit it and it'll let you select any key then. If you have a subscription that is like the premium, the full access amount. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add the song and you'll see that it kind of downloads here. So if you wanted to then change the key, there you go, so you can see it. So there's this edit button up here. You have to be in edit mode to actually change things about the song, not the mixing. You can change the mixing of the song without the edit mode on, but just to be safe, I usually turn it on. But to actually edit anything about the song itself, you have to hit that edit button and be in this mode. And you can see that there's like little minus signs and plus signs in sections when you're in edit mode. So on the songs, you can see this little icon here that has 3 little dots. That's how you can go back in and change those things that I showed you in the song. So then if you want to change the key, this is where after it's been downloaded, you can go in and it'll give you the full range of any key that you want to do it in. And you just select that. So let's say that we wanted to do it in C for some reason. Then I would hit update and it would load for a little while, but then it'll be in that key and it will have transposed all of the instruments in that. But for the sake of right now, we're not doing it in a different key. We're just doing it in A. So while you're in this edit mode here, I usually just like to put in all of what our set list is and then go back and edit things. So I'll show you how to do that. So there's a little plus sign right next to the song. And I'm going to go ahead and add in our other song here, Good Grace. There we go. And we're doing it in the original key, so I'm just going to download it. What we usually like to do, either in between songs or before and after songs, we also have this option called pads that we like to add in for if you're not using like a specific song or you're just kind of playing over top of it, or if you have like a prayer or a transition or something like that, you can have what we call the pads. So I'm going to go back instead of my library, I go into pads. So if you wanted to do click tracks without a pad, like just a straight up click track, you would go into click track and you could add just that. But we like to use the pads just to add a little more depth, so it's called guitar pads. So then you can select the key and you can add a click, or you don't need to use a click if you don't want to. You can select start and end points, but we usually like to just keep it at 10 minutes, and then you can kind of just switch out of it by going to the next song, and I'll show you how to do that. So I usually just select the key and decide whether or not I want to click. So since this is coming out of Good Grace, I'm going to do the key of A because it's an A. I can't remember what the tempo is for the click yet, but I'll just select the click and then I can show you how to edit that. So I'm just going to add it. While you're in this edit mode, you can go back into again, the three little dots in the song itself. I'm just going to go back and refer to what the tempo, what the tempo of that song is. It's 71 for Good Grace. So I want the click after the song to match the tempo of that song. So I'm going to go into the little three dots in the pad, and you can scroll the tempo here in 71 to match it. And the song is in 4/4 for the time signature. So I'm going to update that. So now after the end of the set list, I need a guitar pad in G flat, and usually whenever we have a pad before a song, we typically are either doing a transition or it's at the end of the message when we're kind of just playing before we actually start the track of the last song. So usually if a pad is before a song, I don't put in a click. We just leave it without a click so that we can kind of just be organic, and then usually if it's after a song, you want to keep a progression going within that same tempo, and usually you have the full band there anyway. So since this is before the last song, I'm just going to select the key and no click and add that. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the song. So I'm going to go out of pads here. Let it load there. Oh, sorry, it went away. Back into my library, songs. And our last song is Surrounded. So I'm going to go just search the beginning of that word, Surrounded, Fight My Battles. Everything is good. We're doing it in that same key. And then I'm going to want a pad afterwards because then we'll have the closing of the service after. And again, I want this one to have a click in it. So I'm going to refer to the tempo in Surrounded. So it says 68.5. So when you're adding a tempo or a tempo for the click track in a pad setting, they don't do halves like this. They don't do a 0.5. So I just have to do the math in my head to select the tempo for what will be in the pad. So it'll be 137. So I'm going to add this pad then. I'm going to go out of songs. Again, back into pads. Key of G flat. And then I'm going to do 137. And then depending on, like the other one I did 71, this one I did 137. So then that just determines whether you have the quarter notes or eighth notes actually selected in the pad itself. So I'm just going to do 137 and add. I'm going to, just for fun, I'm going to add another one just so that I can show you something that I do when you have two pads together. So if for some reason you're not using an actual track and you're just using pads because you have like a full band or something, and you know that you need more than 10 minutes worth of a pad, you can just loop that, and I'll show you what that means also later. But sometimes I feel like it's just easier to not have to worry about the loop button turning it on and off. So sometimes if I know something will go more than 10 minutes, I will just add another one, and then you can connect them. And I'll show you how to do that. So let's just say G flat again, and I'll do 137 the same tempo. And then you have both of them in there. Okay. So whenever you do have these two pads, I'll just go ahead and show you that right now. When you have both of these pads in here, what you can do is there are these little transitions here. You see these little arrows that are in between the songs. That is you can actually select that, and then you have different kinds of transitions that you can have between the songs. If you want two pads to go together and the click to not overlap or skip or anything like that, you want the click to continue the same tempo and not trip up, you can do auto link. Auto link means that if there's a click in there, it will line up perfectly. So I'm going to do that. But then what happens is with a pad specifically, it fades up in the beginning, and then all the way at the end of the 10 minutes, it fades down. But if you want the two to be connected kind of seamlessly, you're going to have to edit this a little bit so that they don't fade out and back in and make it obvious that it's two separate ones. So what you can do is you can actually edit the stop point and the start point of the next pad. So for the first one, so that I don't want it to fade out like this, I can take this red line to where I want it to actually stop. So I'm going to take it to one of the, and you can only take it to one of these measure lines here. I'm going to take it to that one just because that's where you can see that it starts to fade after that. And then I'm going to come up to this little clock here. This edit where, so you can set a start point and an end point. Since I'm cutting out the end of it, I'm setting an end point. And whenever I kind of slid it to where that red line is, that makes it easy for me to visualize where I want it to be rather than just guessing an actual time that you can see here that you can scroll. So instead, there's a blue line here that says set from current, and it says 9:57. So that's where I have that red line currently. So I'm just going to tap on that blue. And so now the end point is right there. So then whenever I go into this guitar pad, I can set now a start point somewhere around here because you can see that it's fading up that whole time. So I'm going to bring it to a section where it's kind of bigger, and I'm going to set it from that. Now I'm going to do the start point for this one because I'm cutting out the beginning. Set from current, which is 9 seconds where I had it visually. So now if I have these mixed the right way, so let's just say that I have them both mixed the same way. So let's go to the end of this first pad here just so that you can hear how it kind of seamlessly transitions. Did you hear that? So you can hear that the click kind of like skipped a tiny, tiny bit, but you can hear that it kind of lined back up together. And then you could see how this one started down here where I had it set. So that way it didn't fade out and fade back in. It had just like a seamless transition with the click. All right, so that's how you do the start and set point, or start and end points. And you can sometimes do that for in songs too. If for some reason you're editing it and you're like listening back to it and an ending is like just too long, or it's taking too long of an awkward amount of time to transition or count into the next song, you can actually set an end point for sooner in that section so that it transitions quicker. And I might have to do that in one of these, but so the next thing that I do, or one of the first things I do, actually, I just wanted to show you that linking thing with the pads. One of the first things that I do is I actually mix the songs. So if you actually select the different things that you want to edit, it'll highlight it right there. So I'm going to go into Victory is Yours first. So one of the first things that I do with the click track, and this is just, I think, a personal preference for me, I usually like to just bring the 8th note all the way up so that you have that in there. And then I take the accent down. The accent is sometimes helpful for some people, so you could keep it if your team feels like they need it. But I like to take it out sometimes just because sometimes it skips. It goes like like it does like a little galloping sound. So I take that out just in case so that doesn't happen. And then usually for us, it always depends on how your sound system works, but we need to take the guide, which is the AI that counts us in. So it's like a female's voice that counts us into the sections. We like to call her Karen. Her voice is just seemingly louder than anything else for some reason. So we have to bring her down a decent amount for her to be still audible but not overpowering, and so that you can't hear her through our ears in the house. So I have to bring her down literally. There's like a bass line here, and that means nothing. And then I have to bring the middle of this little blue line in the middle of the slider down to the line that's right above that. It's like the little dotted lines. So that's where I have to bring her down to for us. So then you have all these channels of all the different instruments that are in the song itself. So then you can just mix this however you want. So for example, Our band for this weekend, for Saturday in particular, we have a drummer, so we're going to take out drums. We have a separate percussion person. So we're going to bring down the percussion. That usually includes like tambourines and egg shakers and stuff like that. We don't have a bass player, so I need to keep that up. We don't have acoustics, so I need to keep those up. Actually, I need to bring one down because in Victory Is Yours, for some reason, it has her voice in it, the lead vocal's voice. And then with electrics, I'm going to bring this one down because I know that the guitar player is playing like this particular part. So you can just like go in and listen, and your instrumentalist can kind of decide what they're playing and be able to tell you which instruments they need. So I know that our piano player is going to be playing piano, and then I'm going to leave in the other keys because they have like synth lines and stuff. And then we have background vocals, so I never keep the vocals in there. So I'm going to take both of those vocal things out. So a couple things that you need to know for this, like in the actual slider section. You're able to solo an actual instrument when you're listening to it. So let's see, in particular, like a bigger part of the song. If I want to hear just one of the instruments and what they're doing, I can actually, there's like a little S button right next to the slider. That means that I can solo that instrument and hear what they're doing. So for example, so I can solo this. Okay, and then you have to unsolo it to hear everything else again. So that you're able to kind of like listen through the song and see what each instrument is playing so that you can decide where you want to put them in the sliders. The other thing that I've found, so you have to make sure that you unsolo things, because sometimes in the past we've actually accidentally soloed something out and then we forgot to unsolo it, and then we went to play the song in the beginning of service and that thing was still soloed, so then we couldn't hear anything. So if you do solo something just to like listen to it, make sure that you unsolo it, just to make sure that you have that extra precaution. The other thing is sometimes you'll see a channel like blacked out like this, and then you can't edit it and it won't come through, like it won't. So that means that you kind of muted that channel. So that's just like a different way of doing it instead of just bringing it all the way down. But if for some reason you accidentally click things like this while you're mixing it and you're wondering why it's blacked out and it's not letting you edit it, that's why you've actually accidentally kind of muted it. And you can just unmute it by selecting the actual name in the white letters on the bottom. Okay, so then the other thing that you can do in songs is the other things that you can do in songs, there are these loop buttons that I mentioned before. So let's just say that we're in an instrumental. Let's say we go into this instrumental here, and I want to do this instrumental again. I can just hit this little loop, and it will just take me right back to the beginning of the instrumental. Now that I only did the one loop, it's not looping this time again. It'll just go right into the bridge. Now, if I want to loop just infinitely, there is this infinity loop button. So that means that now this will keep looping until I unselect this button. So if you have like a really long like spoken transition or whatever and you just want to keep looping this until forever, you can just keep this going, and now but with that you have to remember to unselect it then. So then let's say that we're looping it again, and now the song leader is wrapping it up and they kind of give you a signal. You can just unselect that infinity loop button and now it'll go into the next section. You can also skip sections by double clicking that section, and it'll go right into the thing, whatever you double clicked, at the end of this. So watch, it'll finish this section out. If I hit bridge 1 and I double clicked it, now at the end of that section it went straight to that part. So again, I'll show you that. If I double click this, it'll finish out the section that I was just in. And now it's in the instrumental. So you have a lot of control with, even though sometimes you kind of feel limited by the tracks and how they kind of operate, you do have some control if your person who's controlling this has the flexibility to use their hands. They can kind of skip around in sections. They can loop a section just once, or they can infinity loop it, all that kind of stuff. The other thing that you just want to make sure that you have under control is this actual click slider itself. If this is down, none of this other stuff matters. The click will be off. So you'll want to have that all the way up, unless you want to mix that differently if you need it louder or softer. And then the other one is this master volume. If this is accidentally down, none of this is going to matter, and it's going to just be silent or quieter. So those are the other two things that if you for some reason aren't hearing anything, check that. If you're not hearing the click, maybe check that. Okay, so then there's like other ones that are just like more in depth. If you want like more trainings, I'm sure that there are other videos online that you can look at that stuff. So the other thing that you can edit is the actual mapping of the song, and you can add or subtract sections. So for this song in particular this weekend, we are going to add a verse 1 because there's no intro and we have to have a welcome. So I'm going to go back into this edit button, and now you can see the subtract symbols and the plus symbols. So I'm going to add, you can either do it one of these two places, doesn't matter. So I can add right here, and then you have this list of the actual mapping of the song. So I'm just going to add another verse 1, and now it added that to it. So then I'm just going, usually I just look at kind of like the mapping. Some songs have, you know, like the song, and then the song just keeps going forever because they bring it down and then they go back into a million bridges and instrumentals and choruses, and sometimes we have to take those out. So, you know, I usually have to go in and then just like subtract and then just sometimes I leave in the ending, or I leave in some kind of instrumental to kind of fade it out. But you kind of have to use your discretion on that and just kind of like listen so that you are listening for things that aren't super awkward. So for this song in particular, we are doing this low chorus here, and then we're going straight into the next song instead of into a pad. So if we were going into a pad, I'd probably take out this ending, because the endings usually don't have the click in it anymore. For some reason, it just takes the click away. And so sometimes if we're going into a pad, it kind of fades out anyway, and then I would take out that ending and then just smoothly transition into a pad. But since it's going in right into the next song, I'm going to keep that in there, but then I realize that it is a little bit too awkward long of a transition, so I probably will do an end point in this, but I'm going to listen to it real quick. So you can see that I just edited the transition between them, because the arrow that it defaults to, that means no transition at all. That just means that it is going to just stop at the end of that, or you have to actually select the next song. So I go in there and I like to kind of just like pick overlap as my default and just see how that goes. And then sometimes, so crossfade will mean that it will fade down and then fade into the next song. Sometimes I like to select that if it's like a really awkward key transition, if the keys really clash, you don't want them overlapping or something like that. Or auto link will help it, you know, if you need an actual like abrupt ending into the next one, I'll sometimes select auto link. But overlap sometimes is really good, especially when you have two songs like this that are in the same key. So I'm gonna just see how this ends. Ending. Okay, so since the count in is really slow like that, I am going to make the end point here. So I'm just gonna set from current again. I'm gonna go like this. 1, 2. Yep. Intro. So that made it just a tiny bit earlier. 4. All right, so then I'm in the next song. So again, what I like to do is I take up the eighth note, I take away the accent, I bring the guide down to where it needs to be, and then I mix what I actually need in the song and what I don't need. Taking out piano, taking out all the vocals. So doing all of that kind of stuff to actually mix, and then I look at the mapping of the song, it's normal. And then since we are going right into a pad, I'm going to overlap that. Or no, actually, I'm going to auto link it so that, and then I'm going to take out this ending. So this one is like a really small thing and it just says remove section. So that when it goes, so it's completely silent at the end of Good Grace, but like, His kingdom come. Okay, so then it goes into the pad. Now you can hear that this one only has the quarter notes on, so I'm going to need to bring up the eighth note in this and then kind of mix the pad. So particularly with us, our pads, we like to take out the high stuff just to make it like warmer sounding. So I usually like to take the high and the trem completely out, and then I take down the reverse and the shimmer down to about a quarter. The only other things that I look for is this diatone. Depending on the key, sometimes it sounds a little too high and shrill, so I'll bring it like half. But this key isn't too bad, so I just leave it all the way up. All right, so then that's the end of the first set. So I actually leave this one as a no transition just in case I were to accidentally leave it on. But then whenever I go into the last section, so there's a pad before and after the last song because we like to do it like that. So in these situations, I like to overlap no matter what, because whenever we're in this pad in the beginning, we don't have any click in this because it's before the song. Again, I'm gonna mix it, taking the high and the trem out, shimmer and reverse down to a quarter. This one, the diatone is freaking out. It's pretty high, so I'm gonna bring it down to about a half. So now whenever you're in this pad and you want to go ahead into the song and you realize you still have 8 minutes left of this pad, that is okay. You just double click the song that you want to go to. 1. And she will count you
2.
in.
Intro. 2, 3, 4.
But you do kind of have to wait until it kind of loads up there. Okay, so then I'm going to mix this one how I need it to be. Again, I'm going to take this, okay, and then I still have to figure out guitars, but basically I'm going to mix it that way. Again, I'm going to look at the mapping. This is how, yeah, we're doing this pretty standard. So I'm going to take out this ending, and I'm actually going to do an auto link here because I want it to go straight into the guitar pads with the click lining up, because we might repeat this bridge, which we actually probably will do that, so that it kind of like, I'm surrounded by you. And now we're into this next pad here. Okay, so then I'm going to mix it again the same way that I mixed the first one. I'm going to bring the diatone down a little bit. Okay, so then now that is linked to that next one and you have no problems. Mix it that way. So now you're good to go. So I believe that's really all you need to know about this, other than, hey, yeah, if you're like in the end of a song and for some reason you went through all of this transition stuff and it still is just kind of ending really awkwardly, and we just say, okay, we just need to go to the next song, go, go, go. Just double click that song and it'll count you in earlier, okay? So that's just how you kind of go to the next thing. And you can do that with the pads as well. You can double click a pad and it'll go right into that. Okay, so I believe that's everything. I've showed you how to transition, how to download the songs, how to change them, how to go into edit, and you can change how how to edit the tempo or the key or whatever. I think the only other thing is this little fade down button. If for some reason you're at the end of a service and you need to fade it out, like you need to be the one to fade it out instead of the sound people, which hardly ever happens, but let's just say for some reason, oh geez. And you needed to fade it out, you can actually select this little thing right here that's like a fade down. And it faded everything down for you except for the click. So that's really cool, so that you don't have to necessarily do this little master thing. You could do that too, but it just is a cool way for you to just hit one button and it does it for you, and it kind of faded everything down. All right, so I think that that's it, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments or contact one of us and we will be happy to help you. Hope that this helped.